He was the lowest rank on the flight deck. Then the FA-18 started sliding. Hook. The flight deck of an aircraft carrier is often called the most dangerous workplace on Earth. Hundreds of sailors move with perfect precision. Jet engines scream only feet away. Steel cables whip across the deck with enough force to cut through a vehicle. One mistake, one missed signal, 1 second of hesitation can kill dozens. On this cold morning in the North Pacific, one brand-new deck seaman, the lowest-ranked sailor aboard, would face a decision that no one expected him to make. And when a fully armed FA-18 Super Hornet suddenly began sliding toward the edge of the carrier, every senior sailor froze, because there was no time left. Only one person moved. Introduction. January 14, 6:05 hours. USS Theodore Roosevelt. North Pacific Ocean. Sea state 4. Outside temperature just above freezing. Wind across the deck nearly 40 knots. The carrier sliced through rough gray water while preparing for another day of flight operations. Above the ocean, dark clouds rolled endlessly toward the horizon. Visibility remained acceptable, but every sailor knew wet steel could become as slippery as ice. Flight operations continued anyway. They always did. More than 70 aircraft were aboard. FA-18 Super Hornets, EA-18G Growlers, E-2D Hawkeyes, MH-60 Seahawks. Nearly 5,000 sailors called the ship home. On the flight deck alone, over 200 personnel worked in carefully coordinated chaos. Among them was the newest sailor on board, Seaman Apprentice Daniel Brooks, 19 years old, fresh out of training. This was only his 18th day working the flight deck. He wasn't a pilot. He wasn't an officer. He wasn't even qualified to direct aircraft yet. His job sounded simple. Carry equipment, watch for hazards, follow orders, stay out of everyone's way. Most people never noticed sailors like Daniel. Until that morning. Scene 1, the lowest rank. Narration. The morning briefing lasted less than 10 minutes. Every deck crew member gathered around. Yellow shirts, purple shirts, green shirts, blue shirts, red shirts. Each color represented a specialized job. Daniel wore blue, the lowest level of deck support. His supervisor repeated the same warning. Stay alert. Wet deck. Strong winds. Don't assume anything. Daniel nodded quietly. He had memorized every emergency procedure, every escape route, every hand signal. But no classroom could prepare someone for the violence of a live flight deck. Nearby, an FA-18 Super Hornet taxied into launch position. Steam rose from its engines. The entire deck vibrated. Daniel watched from a safe distance, trying not to make mistakes, trying not to be noticed. But then, he noticed something no one else seemed to see. Flight deck dialogue. Chief Petty Officer. Eyes open today. Nobody gets comfortable. That's how people die. Daniel. Aye, Chief. Technical explanation. Aircraft carrier flight decks become extremely slippery when coated with salt water, hydraulic fluid, or jet fuel. Every crew member constantly watches for unsafe conditions because traction can disappear without warning. Suspense ending. Daniel looked toward the fighter's left landing gear. Something looked wrong. Scene 2, the little leak. Narration. The aircraft was preparing for launch. Its pilot completed final cockpit checks. Ground crews removed safety pins. Weapons crews stepped away. The launch director raised his hands. Everything appeared perfectly normal. Except Daniel couldn't stop staring. Tiny drops, barely visible, were falling beneath the left landing gear. Drip, drip, drip. Hydraulic fluid, water, fuel. He wasn't experienced enough to know. His heart raced. Should he say something? Or would he embarrass himself in front of seasoned veterans? He hesitated. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. 5. Then, the leak suddenly stopped. Daniel exhaled. Maybe he'd imagined it. But then, the carrier rolled hard to port. # pilot dialogue. Pilot. Tower Razor 1 ready for launch. Tower. Razor 1 stand by. # technical explanation. Hydraulic systems operate landing gear, brakes, steering, and flight controls. Even a small leak can become dangerous if pressure drops during critical operations. # suspense ending. The fighter moved. Just 1 inch. Nobody reacted. Except Daniel. Scene 3 the slide. # narration. The movement seemed impossible. The aircraft wasn't under engine power. Its brakes should have held it firmly in place. But the deck was wet. The carrier continued turning into the wind. The enormous fighter, weighing over 40,000 pounds, slowly drifted sideways. 1 inch. Then another. Daniel blinked. Was it really moving? The wheel chocks trembled. A deck crewman shouted. Then another. Suddenly, someone screamed. It's moving. Every head turned at once. # flight deck dialogue. Yellow shirt. Brake, brake. Green shirt. Hold position. Pilot. My brakes are set. Chief. Everybody clear. # technical explanation. Carrier decks are constantly moving beneath aircraft. If wheel brakes lose effectiveness on a wet surface, even a heavy fighter can begin sliding unexpectedly. # suspense ending. The nose wheel crossed the painted safety line. And beyond it, there was only ocean. Scene 4 seconds to disaster. # narration. Everything happened at once. Deck crews scattered. The aircraft continued drifting. The pilot increased brake pressure. Nothing. The wheels simply slid. The carrier pitched downward. Gravity did the rest. The fighter accelerated. 1 knot. Then 2. Then faster. No launch system could stop it. No tow tractor could reach it in time. Several senior crew members froze. Calculating. Searching desperately for options. Daniel wasn't calculating. He was running. Straight toward the sliding aircraft. # flight deck dialogue. Chief. Daniel stop. Pilot. I'm sliding. Bridge. All stations, aircraft loose. # passenger reactions. There were no passengers. Only sailors. And every sailor watching believed they were seconds away from witnessing a deadly accident. # technical explanation. An aircraft moving unexpectedly on a carrier creates enormous danger because nearby personnel have very limited escape routes. # suspense ending. Daniel grabbed something lying beside the catapult. It wasn't part of his job, but it might be his only chance. Scene 5 the impossible decision. # narration. In his hands was a heavy emergency wheel chock. nearly 40 pounds, designed to stop aircraft from rolling, not aircraft already sliding. Veteran sailors knew it wouldn't work. There was too much momentum, too much weight, too little time. Daniel knew that too. But doing nothing guaranteed disaster. He sprinted toward the left main landing gear. Jet exhaust blasted across the deck. Rain lashed his face. The aircraft continued moving. Only 20 feet remained before the edge. Someone shouted for him to get back. He ignored them. # flight deck dialogue. Chief, get away from the jet. Daniel, almost there. Pilot, hold on, hold on. # technical explanation. Wheel chocks are designed to prevent movement before it begins. Attempting to place one beneath a moving aircraft is extraordinarily dangerous and is not standard procedure. # suspense ending. Daniel dropped to one knee and reached toward the moving tire. # scene 6 impact. # narration. Time seemed to stop. The massive tire rolled toward him. The deck shook beneath his boots. He forced the wheel chock forward with everything he had. For one terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, a violent metallic crack echoed across the flight deck. The aircraft lurched violently. Crew members covered their faces. The fighter bounced. Daniel disappeared beneath a cloud of spray. No one could see whether he had survived. For 3 endless seconds, the entire flight deck fell silent. Then someone whispered, "Did he stop it?" # technical explanation. A sudden interruption in wheel movement can create tremendous stress on landing gear and tidal points. Whether the aircraft stopped or continued sliding would determine the outcome of the next few seconds. # cliffhanger. As the mist cleared, the fighter was no longer moving. But Daniel was nowhere in sight. Narration. For weeks after the incident, investigators examined every detail. The FA-18 was carefully secured below deck before being transported to a maintenance facility. Every hydraulic line, every brake component, every wheel assembly was disassembled and inspected. The cockpit voice recorder and aircraft maintenance data recorder held thousands of pieces of information. Nothing was left to chance. When investigators synchronized the cockpit recordings with flight deck security cameras, they finally saw exactly what had happened. A small hydraulic fitting inside the left brake system had fractured under pressure. The leak had been almost invisible. Brake pressure slowly bled away while the pilot completed pre-launch checks. When the carrier rolled into the wind for launch, gravity took over. The aircraft began sliding before anyone realized the brakes were no longer holding. Only one person noticed the first warning: the newest sailor on the flight deck, Daniel Brooks. Cockpit recording. Pilot, brakes feel normal. Maintenance control. Hydraulic indications remain within limits. Pilot, copy. Only seconds later, everything changed. Technical explanation. Hydraulic systems on modern fighter aircraft are designed with redundancy, but a hidden leak can reduce braking effectiveness before cockpit instruments detect a serious problem. Combined with a wet, moving carrier deck, even a small loss of pressure can allow a parked aircraft to slide. Suspense ending. Investigators had confirmed how the aircraft moved. But one question remained: why didn't it go overboard? Scene 15, the decision that changed everything. Narration. Frame by frame. The high-speed camera footage revealed something remarkable. Daniel had not tried to stop the aircraft by strength alone. Instead, He remembered a lesson from training. Never fight the aircraft. Change its path. At the last possible moment, he forced the emergency wheel chock at an angle beneath the moving tire. The chock didn't stop the jet instantly. It redirected just enough of the aircraft's momentum toward a reinforced tie-down point already welded into the deck. The left landing gear struck the steel fitting. The impact absorbed enough energy for the remaining brake pressure to hold. Another 2 seconds, and the fighter would have crossed the deck edge. Flight deck dialogue. Chief, I've never seen anyone think that fast. Senior Director. He wasn't lucky. He understood what mattered. Technical explanation. Emergency equipment is designed to slow or redirect movement, not perform miracles. Daniel's action bought just enough time for the aircraft to catch against a structural point on the carrier deck. Suspense ending. The investigators closed their notebooks. The mystery had been solved, but Daniel still didn't know what everyone else was about to learn. Scene 16. Recognition. Narration. 1 month later, the crew gathered once again on the flight deck. This time, there were no screaming engines, no launch crews, no emergency alarms, only silence. The commanding officer stepped forward. Behind him stood the pilots whose aircraft had nearly gone into the ocean. Thousands of sailors watched. Daniel stood in the back, still wearing the same blue jersey that marked him as one of the most junior members of the crew. He never expected to be called forward. But then, the captain spoke his name. Commanding officer. Rank does not determine courage. Experience does not always recognize danger first. On January 14, Seaman Apprentice Daniel Brooks saw what others could not. He acted without hesitation. His actions protected a fellow sailor, prevented the loss of a combat aircraft, and likely saved many lives. Today, this crew thanks him. The flight deck erupted in applause. Even the fighter pilot who had been inside the cockpit stepped forward. Without saying a word, he removed his squadron patch and placed it into Daniel's hand. Among naval aviators, few gestures carry greater respect. Suspense ending. Daniel looked down at the patch. He still couldn't believe it. Scene 17. A lesson for every sailor. Narration. Training films across the fleet would later include the incident. Not because someone performed a miracle, but because someone paid attention. Investigators concluded that several factors had combined to create the near disaster. A hidden hydraulic brake leak, wet flight deck conditions, carrier movement during launch positioning, reduced braking effectiveness, a rapidly developing chain of events. Yet they also found something equally important. The first warning had been visible. Tiny drops beneath the landing gear. Almost too small to notice. Almost. Technical explanation. In aviation safety, accidents are rarely caused by a single failure. They result from a chain of small events. Breaking that chain, even for a second, can prevent catastrophe. Suspense ending. One observation. One decision. 1 second. That was all it took. Final ending. Narration. The FA-18 was repaired and eventually returned to operational service. Its pilot flew again. The carrier continued its deployment. The mission never stopped. Daniel Brooks remained aboard the ship. He finished his qualifications. He earned the respect of every department on the flight deck. Years later, young sailors would hear the story of the newest deckhand who refused to look away. Not because he was fearless, but because he understood something every great aviator, maintainer, and sailor eventually learns. Safety belongs to everyone. The lowest rank can notice what the highest rank cannot. Experience is valuable, but vigilance saves lives. On an aircraft carrier, there are no small jobs, only small moments. And sometimes, one small moment changes everything. As the sun disappeared behind the Pacific horizon, another FA-18 thundered into the evening sky. Its afterburners painted the clouds orange. The flight deck returned to its endless rhythm. Controlled, disciplined, relentless. But somewhere beneath the roar of the engines, every sailor remembered the morning when a single junior seaman reminded an entire crew that courage is measured not by rank, but by the willingness to act when everyone else hesitates.